From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thanks, Ollie. Welcome to Wednesday's programme. How you doing? I tell you what, folks, it's been warm in Manchester today. Temperatures topped 23 degrees this afternoon. Wow, it must be climate change. What else could it be? I take back everything I ever said. Piers Corbyn is wrong. Oh, God. It was just warm. Warm. Indian summer. There you go. That's it.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
And I'm no fool either. I took advantage of the warm weather to wash the jazz woman. My dog was washed by me this afternoon. It took me 45 minutes, covered from head to toe in dog hair and suds and everything else. But good, because she went outside and a few minutes later she was dry. Am I really telling you about that? I might be, yeah. Right, let's do Wednesday's programme then.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
Yes, you've got me till the top of the hour. I'm with you for an hour today for a change, just for a one-off. I've got a very interesting hour of news and current affairs analysis coming up for you. As usual, you can take part by tweeting me. That's all you got to do. If you've got something to say about any of the stories I've decided to cover, you can tweet at Richie Allen Show, and I will read those tweets out as they come in. Alright, it's only a one-off this week. Back to 2 hours tomorrow with 2 guests. But today, it's just you and me. I did a 45-minute live stream earlier on YouTube, by the way. I've got to tell you about that in case you haven't seen it. Go to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. And I did a stream on debate and why we need robust debate now more than ever. If you might want to watch that, you might want to take issue with it. It's on youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. Let's get rid of the old theme tune there then. Yeah, what a day. What a day it has been here. Incredibly warm. Hi to Tristan, who's in Florida. Tristan, you know, there must be something in the air, as Thunderclap Newman once famously sang. Because I was going to ask, or I was going to say, that I hope those of our listeners who live in Florida, and we have a few listeners who live in Florida, because I've heard from Floridians many a time over the last few years. I hope you're going to be okay. I don't know what to make of this storm. I've got a BBC webpage open in front of me now, and I'm looking at a satellite image of the storm, and it looks dreadful, really. Not that I'm a meteorologist, and not that I'm capable of reading these charts, but it looks horrendous there. They're saying it could be as bad as any storm to hit the region in 100 years, and the governor of Florida, a guy called Rick Scott, has said that it probably will bring unimaginable devastation. If you are in Florida, I hope you're going to be okay, and I hope you're battening down the hatches and taking every precaution there and ride it out, and good luck with that. I've never experienced anything like that. Obviously, growing up in the Republic of Ireland, I shouldn't say the Republic of Ireland, should I? Growing up in Ireland, we've never had anything like that. We just haven't. Maybe older Irish men and women might remember bad weather. Well, of course, Irish folk who live on the coasts. Now, I was brought up on the coast in Waterford, but the Irish Sea, we never saw anything like that, anything remotely like it. I was at sea a couple of times on ferries over the years, and we had some very bad weather, and the ferry was listing heavily side to side, and it was it was nerve-wracking. But I've never experienced anything like what they're going to get in Florida. And I know there will be some of our listeners who will talk about technology and interfering with the jet stream and ionosphere heaters and how you feel that sort of equipment might be influencing the weather or accelerating existing weather patterns. And I'm wide open to that, as you know, because I've interviewed learned folks over the years who know all about that. All right, so I'm not ignoring it. I just can't talk about it because you can't prove any of this stuff today anyway. So good luck if you're in Florida, and mind yourself, as we say back home. Mind yourself and your family. Look after yourself there. Right, hope you'll be okay. Now, one of the biggest stories today in the mainstream media here in the UK is this story, which I talked about in my YouTube live stream a little earlier on. And it's the story of the Christian owners of a bakery in Northern Ireland. Now, they've won their appeal in what has come to be known as the gay cake discrimination case. The UK Supreme Court ruled, all 5 justices were unanimous in saying that Asher's Bakery in Northern Ireland was not discriminatory when it refused to make a cake with a slogan supporting same-sex marriage. So the justices were all unanimous in that. This began back in 2014 when the bakery refused to make this cake with the slogan, support gay marriage. Benign enough slogan, support gay marriage. Now, the customer was a man called Gareth Lee, who's a gay rights activist, and he sued the bakery for discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation and political beliefs. And he initially won that back in 2014-2015. He won the case against the bakery, and the bakery appealed, and the bakery lost. So the bakery, having lost the case to the gay rights activist, took it to the Supreme Court, and today the Supreme Court ruled in favour of the bakery and their right not to make the cake with the slogan. Would you like to hear the reasons for the Supreme Court decision? You know, one of the things I take great pleasure in, and I have done for many years, I like listening to legal minds, men and women who've worked in the law for many years. I love listening to how they have reached their conclusion, how they have formed their opinion. It's fascinating stuff. And I've read a lot over the years about how legal scholars, legal minds, Supreme Court judges, how they arrive at their opinions. So Lady Hale is the president of the UK's Supreme Court, and here she's explaining why the court is unanimous in affirming the right of the bakery not to make the cake with that slogan. Supreme Court President Lady Hale.
The bakers did not refuse to fulfil his order because of his sexual orientation. They would have refused to make such a cake for any customer, irrespective of their sexual orientation. Their objection was to the message on the cake, and not to the personal characteristics of Mr. Lee or of anyone else with whom he was associated. This conclusion is not in any way to diminish the need to protect gay people and people who support gay marriage from discrimination. It is deeply humiliating and an affront to human dignity to deny someone a service because of that person's race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, religion or belief. But that is not what happened in this case.
Really interesting stuff there from the President of the UK Supreme Court, Lady Hale. Now, Gareth Lee, the man who brought the initial case against the bakery, obviously disappointed because it went against them. This is what he said outside the court shortly afterwards.
All I wanted was to order a cake in a shop that sold cakes to order. I paid my money. My money was taken, and then a few days later it was refused based upon the beliefs of the business owners. That made me feel like a second-class citizen, and the judgment today tells me that that's okay. I'm concerned not just for the implications for myself or other gay people, but for every single one of us, because do we have to guess before, when we go into a shop, whether we're going to be served or not?
That's an interesting point now. And I said this today on the live stream I did. It's interesting that he said there, would we have to guess before we enter the shop what their opinion might be on gay marriage or whatever? And this is why the law is so complicated. It's why I love it. Because you can make a cogent and lucid argument to support the bakery, and you can make a good argument to support the rights of the gay man. Now, I'll tell you where I am in a minute in terms of what I would have done and why, very briefly. I won't bore you with it. Let's hear from Daniel MacArthur. He's the bakery manager and also the owner's son, Daniel MacArthur.
We're delighted and relieved at today's ruling. We always knew we hadn't done anything wrong in turning down this order. After more than 4 years, the Supreme Court has now recognised that, and we're very grateful. Grateful to the judges, and especially grateful to God. We're particularly pleased the Supreme Court emphatically accepted what we've said all along. We did not turn down this order because of the person who made it, but because of the message itself. The judges have given a clear signal today. In fact, it couldn't be clearer. Family businesses like ours are free to focus on giving all their customers the best service they can without being forced to promote other people's campaigns.
Interesting. Why are you covering this, Richie? It's very important, this story, because it has implications for the future of free speech and free thought in this country, which is coming under attack from all sections of society. It really is. This just happens to be the issue that's in the news at the moment. And it's very interesting listening to how both sides see this. Now, Sky News today had one of its mini debates, which I talked about today as well. And it pitted Orthodox Christian and gay rights activist Nick Yovchich-Sass, that's Nick Yovchich-Sass, against the barrister Mark Hill. I suppose there's no need for me to tell you that the activist opposes the Supreme Court decision and the barrister supports it, but I've told you anyway. So let's hear from the activist Nick Yovchich-Sass. He's obviously not happy with the decision, and he explains why here.
Well, I'm very shocked and disappointed by it. I think fundamentally that UK law shouldn't protect racism, it shouldn't protect racism, and it shouldn't protect homophobia. And I think I find it particularly alarming as someone who is a devout Christian themselves. I don't understand what this has to do with the protection of my faith. At the end of the day, if you aren't in favour of gay marriage, if you don't want a gay marriage, don't have one. And if you don't like writing nice messages on cakes, then maybe you shouldn't be a baker.
Maybe you shouldn't be a baker. It's interesting that Nick says he's a devout Christian. I say that because the biggest influence on my career, and one of the greatest human beings I ever met, was a man called Billy McCarthy, whom I've mentioned a few times on this programme. Billy was gay, and he was in a relationship with his partner Des for 25, 30, 35 years. A lovely man. And Billy was in the priesthood. He did theology at a university in Dublin, and he spent time in America, and he became a priest. But he left the priesthood because he couldn't reconcile who he was with the teachings of Christianity, because Christianity teaches explicitly that it's wrong to be gay. Now, of course, I don't believe that. I'm not a Christian. I'm just saying that's what the church would teach. So Billy, my mentor and my great friend as he was, way back when I worked with him and for him, left the priesthood, amazingly, because Billy was gay. And he couldn't reconcile that with standing on the pulpit on Sunday mornings or Saturday evenings and preaching the Christian doctrine. Right, fair enough. So I'm just interested that he's a Christian, and a devout Christian, an Orthodox Christian, and that he can, he doesn't mind that the church explicitly says that he's going to hell. And I don't say that for a laugh. It does teach that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, so the barrister Mark Hill then, QC, he thinks this is an excellent decision, and he outlines why.
I think that slightly misrepresents the decision. What we have received today from the Supreme Court is an anodyne decision which supports the freedom of speech, something which we all value in any liberal democracy. There's nothing homophobic or bigoted about the judgment. On the contrary, Lady Hale went out of her way to express her support for the gay community and to give the backing of the law for all that implies. All that has been said is that in Northern Ireland, where the issue of gay marriage remains political, it's not yet lawful as it is in the remainder of the United Kingdom. No individual should be compelled to sign up to a message in which they don't believe. It's as simple as that. It's an anodyne judgment, and I welcome it.
No individual can be compelled to sign up to a message they don't believe. It's about free speech and the freedom to express your opinion. That's what the Supreme Court decision is about, said the barrister, Mark Hill. So what did the gay rights activist and Christian Nick Jovcic-Sass say to that?
Well, I think there's kind of a little bit of double talk going on right here, because I think sometimes fundamentalists will sort of say one thing and mean another. So, for example, on the issue of abortion, people will say they're pro-life, when what they really mean is they're anti-choice. And I think in this instance, what's being said is people are saying their freedom of speech. What we're talking about is the freedom of people to hate and discriminate against certain groups. And I think the implications of this ruling shows to that, people still think that homophobia is an acceptable belief in this country, that minorities, gay people like myself, shouldn't have equal rights to other people, and that should be protected by UK law.
Homophobia, people think that homophobia is an acceptable belief, said Nick Jovcic-Sass. Now, I'm neither homophobic, which is a term I don't understand, to be honest. To take it literally, to be afraid of gay people. I'm certainly not afraid of gay people. I know plenty of gay people. I can say that honestly. I was honest enough to admit recently I don't know too many black people, but I know plenty of gay people. And homophobia, some people think homophobia is acceptable. Do you know what? It has to be acceptable, doesn't it? If homophobia means a fear of or a loathing of gay people, well, we kind of have to accept that, don't we? If some people think like that, and I don't believe the Bakers, by the way, hated or loathed gay people. I don't believe that, but I don't know them. But you can't eliminate ideas or thoughts that you find uncomfortable from society. You can't. So long as people are not screaming abuse at people, threatening people, or trying to harm people, or trying to inhibit somebody's career, trying to prevent them from getting on. If you're not doing that, and you just think that, well, I don't like gay people, or I don't agree with it, or whatever, you have to accept that there will be people in the world who think like that. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't, unless you really do want to introduce or impose some sort of authoritarian thought police on society. It's as simple as that. We've all got to get used to the fact that others have ideas that we don't like, and sometimes ideas that we really don't like. But we have to get on with them. You won't hear me calling for the jailing of or the banning of far-right commentators whom I don't like or don't agree with, ever. They're going to think what they're going to think, irrespective of what I say or do or anybody else says or does. You have to tolerate them, I would say. Back to the barrister. Is it freedom to be a bigot? So Nick Jovcic-Sass said that what this decision is, it's basically, freedom to hate and freedom for hate speech. What does the barrister say about that? Again, referring to today's decision.
There is nothing homophobic at all in the decision. I'm sorry to talk over you. Nothing homophobic at all in the decision. On the contrary, the judgment expressly recognises that the bakers were perfectly prepared to provide any service they wished to the customer. This isn't about the customer. This is purely about the message. The great thing about the debate that we're having today is you've brought together two speakers with diametrically opposed views. If at the end of this interview you asked me to adopt all that the other speaker has said, or vice versa, that would be an outrage. So all that the court is doing is saying that wherever you are, you can express whatever view you wish, but you cannot be compelled to express an opinion which you do not believe in. That is a victory for liberal democracy.
Yeah, and I agree with it. I've thought long and hard about it today. I agree with it. I agree that the bakers shouldn't be compelled to write a message on a cake that they don't agree with. I would support that, having listened to the Supreme Court President's reasoning and her opinion, and then listening to what those guys said there. I think you've got to support it. You've got to support their right not to do it. That being said, I could understand the annoyance of the man, Gareth Lee, who had his order accepted. They took his money and then contacted him to say they wouldn't do it and that he would give him a refund. Support gay marriage was the 3-word slogan he wanted on the cake. And they said, well, we can't be compelled to write that because we don't agree with it. Now, what would I do? Well, first of all, I have no problem with gay marriage. Of course I don't. I absolutely support the rights of same-sex couples to be recognised as a partnership under the law and to have all the same protections that, heterosexual couples have. Of course I do. And I just think it's logical. Why wouldn't you? I don't like the idea of adoption by same-sex couples. I've talked about this quite a lot. And I thought to myself today, if I had a bakery and a gentleman came in or a lady came in and they were in a same-sex relationship and they wanted me to put a relatively harmless slogan supporting gay adoption on a cake, something I don't agree with, would I put the slogan on the cake? Now, you're going to think this is very political and I'm turning into half a politician. I'm not. I'd put the thing on the cake. I couldn't be arsed, you know what I mean? You know, the law says, sadly, that same-sex couples can adopt children. I don't like the idea of it. And I've explained why. It's got nothing to do with any safety issues around the children at all. It's for far deeper reasons, which I've gotten into before. But if somebody said to me, put the slogan on, Richie, I probably would. I don't even know if it would annoy me. I might say something like, well, or maybe I wouldn't say anything. Maybe I just put the slogan on, say nothing, give them the cake, take the $50 or whatever it is and move on. It is about freedom of expression and freedom of opinion and freedom of thought. There's no doubt about that. And you've got to support that. And this is a very interesting case today. It might seem like something of nothing, like a mainstream media story that's getting a lot of attention on an independent news radio show like mine. But it has implications going forward for people's rights to say, for example, no, I do not believe that a trans woman is a real woman. And I'm not going to accept that. And I'm not going to be told I have to accept it. You might have you might have a situation in the future where employers in family businesses, in small businesses, in cooperatives, where they might say, you know, an employee of mine has become a trans person. I don't agree with it. I don't believe that person is a real man or that person is a real woman. And this ruling actually has implications for that going forward. And I'm interested in it. Peter Tatchell, the human rights campaigner, agrees with the Supreme Court. He said it's a victory for freedom of expression, as well as meaning that the Ashers cannot be legally forced to aid the promotion of same-sex marriage. It also means that gay bakers cannot be compelled by law to decorate cakes with anti-gay marriage slogans. And that's a pretty mature way of looking at it, isn't it? On the one hand, the Christians can say, no, I don't agree with gay marriage, so I'm not going to put that slogan on the cake. Equally, a gay baker, you can't, he can say to somebody who comes in and says, I want a cake that says, down with gay marriage. The gay baker can say, well, no, I don't want to put that on the cake because I don't agree with that. Interesting times. 26 minutes past the hour. I'm interested in your comments on that. Just before we leave that alone, there's a story in the Daily Mail today about a lesbian couple who've been complaining to a Christian school about discrimination. Why? Because the headmaster at the school apparently told them that their daughter's admission would be a problem because of their same-sex relationship. So this is Rebecca Shields and Claire Morgan. They have told the Daily Mail that they were dumbfounded when the head teacher made the comments right in front of their 11-year-old daughter. The head teacher is a guy called Adrian Parsonage, lovely name for the head teacher of a Christian school, Parsonage. And it's the River School in Worcester, which is a Christian school. And he told the women, the lesbian couple, the parents, that the school teaches the ethos that relationships should be between a man and a woman. And he went on to say that he would have to speak to teachers about this problem before deciding whether or not their daughter should get a place at the fee-paying independent school. It's an expensive school, right? So anyway, they've complained about discrimination. So obviously what's going on here is the school must be doing very well its rating must be very good, right? And the couple want their daughter in there, but it's a Christian school, and it's got very strong opinions about same-sex couples, not just same-sex marriage. And the head teacher is saying, we teach, this is our teaching, that a relationship should be between a man and a woman, and that's going to be a problem for your daughter who's got 2 mums at home, and they're kicking off now. You see, in this case, it could be argued, listening to the Supreme Court decision today, that the lesbian couple wants to have their cake and eat it, no pun intended, right, after the last story. Right, we don't agree with the school's teaching on this stuff, but it's a bloody good school, so we want our daughter in there. Interesting times. This is Wednesday's Richie Allen Show. Very quick break. Back in a minute with plenty more. And I'll be reading your tweets out as well when I come back. Keep tweeting. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter, at Richie Allen Show on Twitter.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever. Forever.
Welcome back to the most listened to independent radio show in Europe. It's your Richie Allen Show.
Loads of comments on this. Let me read out a few of them there. Moinga tweets that it's very interesting, and he was very interested in hearing the explanation by the Supreme Court President as to how the conclusion was reached. David Stanford says, petty people target suing, meaning the gay man Gareth Lee is petty for target suing. Could a Christian go into a Muslim baker's and expect a cake saying Jesus the one true God? No, and no more would be said about that, says David. Yes and no, I agree with that pretty much, but I can also understand why the guy was cheesed off, and having given the order and had his money taken, and for them then to decide not to do it, you could argue that the Christian bakers were a bit petty and also a little bit, just a little bit intolerant of other people's ideas. What difference does it make if you put support gay marriage on the cake? Unless they were somehow convinced that there was a reason why Gareth Lee came to their bakery. Now, from what I understand, Gareth Lee hadn't a clue that the bakery was run by deeply committed Christians. So he didn't go in there just to take the piss out of them. And he didn't specifically choose that bakery just to wind them up. Maybe they thought he did, maybe. But if they didn't think that, you know, just put the thing on the cake. However, I agree with the Supreme Court decision. They should have the right not to do it. Life would be a little bit easier, though, if we just had a little bit, just a smidgen more tolerance for the opinions of others. Like I said, I don't agree with same-sex adoption. I've gone into that in great detail on previous shows. And if I had a bakery and somebody came in and said, put something on the cake about same-sex adoption, I probably would, you know. I just probably would. Plenty of tweets, though. Patrick Vidine tweets, what concerns me, Richie, is that several judgments in other courts upheld the complaint, and it took the UK Supreme Court to come up with the ruling. I agree the bakery should be entitled to express their disapproval of homosexuality by disallowing advertising of such. I'm not sure that support gay marriage is advertising homosexuality, Patrick, but I take your point. Paul Craven tweets, we should give everyone their point of view, from neo-Nazis to Talmudic Jews. Take everything in, then decide for yourself. Don't leave your opinions gathering dust on a shelf. Good stuff. Paul Sweeney tweets, not really a free speech, Richie, is it? A free speech issue, Richie, is it? It's about a special order item, more of a work contract. That's a good point, Paul. Maybe it could be argued that once they'd taken his money and the order, that they had entered into a contract with him, and therefore they should have just made the blooming cake and got on with it. Dean Smith tweets, Richie, the local pub landlord once didn't serve me. He said I was pissed. I disagreed, but it was his right to not serve me. But then I'm a white man who isn't in a victim group, so there was nothing I could do. I went home. I worked in a pub many years ago, and from time to time, a very old traveller couple would come into the pub. This is a true story. When I say they were very old, they were very old. They were into their late 80s. And they used to shuffle in. I think they'd settled. I think they'd left the nomadic life. They'd left the caravan and they'd moved into a property. A more quiet and inoffensive couple you couldn't ever wish to meet. Anyway, no bother. But the pub changed hands. And I was DJing at this pub. And then one afternoon they were short of a barman. And they asked me would I step in. I stepped in. Anyway, in comes the couple, and the new owner of the pub asked me to refuse them. And I said, they're okay, those people, they're nice. He said, they're travellers. I said, they're okay, they always come in here. When I say always, they come in like once every few weeks or once a month. They're absolutely harmless. And he said, no, I know that sooner or later, other travellers are going to come in, you know, nomadic folk, and it's going to kick off, so you're to refuse them. And I said to the owner at the time, I didn't need the gig, I didn't need the job anyway. Not that I would have said anything any different even if I did need the job. I said to him, well, you're going to have to tell them yourselves. And he said, why? I said, I'm not going to humiliate them. I've been serving them forever. In my time when I used to work behind the bar of the pub, and then I went away from bar work, got into radio. Now I'm DJing back in the same pub. I know these people. I'm not going to tell them they can't have a drink. You tell them they can't have a drink. Anyway, he told me to fuck off, the owner. And I said, okay, fair enough. And that was before the Irish government brought in anti-discrimination legislation that now makes it illegal for somebody to be refused in a pub because of who they are, because of their ethnicity, because of their colour, their creed, their gender, their sexual orientation, and also they can't be discriminated against if they live the travelling lifestyle. Now, bit of reality. I've been in pubs over the years where young travelling men have come in and looked for trouble. No doubt about it. Absolutely. And I've challenged them. And when I worked on radio in Ireland, I used to interview some of these guys. Travellers, some young travelling men can be bastards. Troublemakers. They come into town, they go to a pub, they rock up, and they're looking for trouble. And I understand. And historically, I've understood why some publicans have been very, very wary of the travelling man's custom. So, yeah, I understand that. It must be very embarrassing for anybody to walk into a pub and to be told, no, you can't have a drink based on because the publican or because the bar person has some idea that you're not suitable to have a drink. So, yeah. Faisal tweets, funny how it's okay to hate Trump supporters, Russians, elected Middle East leaders like Assad, Brexiteers, and all kinds of people that the media don't agree with. But to criticise anything the media is hyping up is hate speech. And Faisal is obviously referencing what the Christian gay rights activist said earlier on to Sky News. Good stuff, good comment that. Keep the tweets coming in at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Right, Rob Allen says, what about a few points and the conversation? PC and debate goes out the window. We need to close the pubs, says Rob Allen. Rob, I don't know what you mean by that. You can use 240 characters these days in Twitter. You might want to rephrase that. What about a few points and the conversation? PC and debate goes out the window. We need to close the pubs. Are you suggesting that pubs have been targeted for closure and pubs are struggling because there is an agenda to get people out of pubs? If you're saying that, I would agree with you. The public house has for decades been the hub of a community, not just full of pissheads and booze hounds, but often full of people who just pop in for one or two, just to meet their neighbours, just to get a sense of what's going on in their community. If that's what you're saying, I agree with that. 22 minutes to the top of the hour. Christ, I could go on forever. I've got so much more to get into as well, by the way. There was a disturbing article in the Telegraph yesterday, and I wanted to get into this yesterday, but I had no time. Packed programme with Phil Giraldi and Jim Fetzer yesterday. No time to get into this. Celia Walden wrote an outstanding piece for the Telegraph, and the headline was "The Depressing Truth Behind Britain's Addiction to Happy Pills." I'm going to read her article. So this is Celia Walden. She writes, "A few months ago I was sitting in my GP surgery in Los Angeles, where I still spend a third of the year, making the kind of stilted conversation that you do as a Velcro fastened cuff slowly cuts off the circulation in your arm. I told the doctor about the novel I was working on and how arduous writing was. I think I mentioned something about the tiredness caused by a child with a chronic sleep aversion not really helping." So she was saying to the doctor, "Yeah, I'm a bit knackered. I'm working on this new novel. My child just won't sleep and my child is keeping me up all night. Life whinges, but, you know, overall I'm all right." So Celia writes, "These were little life whinges. The overall tone was casual, jokey even. But as I left, the doctor tore a sheet off his prescription pad and handed it to me. 'This will help,' he said. The prescription was for Wellbutrin, or Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin. Yeah, Wellbutrin, right? Real name, bupropion hydrochloride, a popular antidepressant in the US. But I'm not depressed," Celia Walden pointed out to her doctor. "It's a low dosage," he shrugged. "It'll give your energy levels a boost and generally perk you up even." Now, before I read any more of Celia Walden's article, I'm going to be a bit draconian here. That doctor should be fucking struck off and should never be allowed to see a patient ever again. I'm writing a book. I'm a little bit stressed out because of it. My child won't sleep and I'm a bit knackered. But you know, that's life, isn't it, doctor? And without blinking an eye, he hands her a prescription for an antidepressant. He should be fucking sacked. Gone. Struck off. Who is he working for? To be prescribing that stuff to somebody who isn't depressed, who's just like everybody else. Tired. Worn down. Because of work. Because of everything else. The struggles of life. He gives her a prescription. What does she write? She writes, "If there's a more tempting promise for any working or stay-at-home mum, dad, man, millennial, or adult human alive today, I'd love to hear it. Perk you up." And I was so tempted, writes Celia Walden, that I tore that prescription up as soon as I got in the car. She was actually thinking about filling the prescription. But in the car, she went, "Christ, this is madness," and tore it up. Because, she writes, "I couldn't be less depressed. I get all the perking up I need from coffee, wine and good company. And because we're all well aware that for many in genuine medical need, antidepressants aren't about perking up your life but saving it," she says. I might take issue with some of that, but anyway. According to a new report by the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Prescribed Drug Dependence, millions of Brits being prescribed magic sweeties aren't being warned about the drug's side effects, the nausea, anxiety, insomnia, loss of sex drive, or how difficult it might be to give them up. And this is what staggered me, dear listener, about her article, if it isn't staggering enough already. Excuse me. She writes, "In the survey of 319 British antidepressant users, all of whom were trying to quit the pills, 64% revealed they were given zero information about the potential risks and side effects by their doctors, while 25% said no advice had been given on how to come off the medication. But the most alarming finding," writes Celia Walden, "was that many doctors were themselves completely unaware of the pill's potential dangers either. This asshole in Los Angeles was saying, 'Oh, you're a bit tired, your baby's crying. Here's an antidepressant.' And she's saying that there's a good chance that he doesn't even know what the implications might be for taking that drug. Namely insomnia, psychosis maybe. You know, all sorts of side effects. It would be laughable if it weren't so depressing, writes Celia Walden, and proof of a shameful lack of medical responsibility and accountability. And then she writes, and this is incredible, she writes, isn't it just as well that British doctors don't prescribe them in the cavalier fashion of the LA doctor and Prozac nation, right? Wrong. The latest figures shows that 13% of Americans are on antidepressants compared to 16% of Brits. More than 7 million people in this country, dear listener, out of 60 million are taking antidepressants. More than almost every country in the Western world, and it is doubled in 10 years. I couldn't fucking believe this when I was reading it. That's what's going on in surgeries. I saw the doctor last week. I'm sure if I'd have said, I didn't say, I had to go in there over my salbutamol inhaler because I've got asthma which is triggered by dust. I don't use it so often, but I need to have it to hand. Sometimes when I run, I might need a little bit of it. I use one inhaler in about 6 weeks, so I don't use much of it. You've got to go in every now and then and justify to these people why you still need it, right? I'm sure now that if I'd said, well, I've had chronic insomnia, which I have had and do have and am dealing with, and I'm a bit fed up, and sometimes I feel, just before it gets to 5 o'clock, sometimes I feel like not doing the radio show. Sometimes I feel like, fuck it, I can't do it. I haven't got the energy to do it. I can't build myself up to do it. I just can't, get myself into the frame of mind needed to present live radio. Now, that's not every day, but every now and then I get like that, and I just slap myself in the face and say, you big ignorant baldy bastard, do the fucking radio show and shut up about it. To myself, and then I do the radio show and have a good time. I'm sure if I said that to the doctor last week, I'd have come out of there with God knows what. Wellbutrin, huh? This'll perk you up, Richie. This is some brilliant article in the Telegraph by Celia Walden. She says, do not tell me we're twice as unhappy as we were 10 years ago. That millions of us were simply undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, or that British medical professionals operate on a lofty plane immune to fads and the appeal of the quick fix. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to read any more of that article. You can find it yourself at telegraph.co.uk. Maybe Celia Walden, if she keeps going down the yellow brick road, will conclude that the influence wielded by the agents of and the representatives of major pharmaceutical companies on doctors is fucking unholy. It's obscene. And I told you about 3 years ago that there's a neighbour of mine who used to work as a drug rep, and he retired years ago. He's a bit of an arsehole. And he admitted to me over dinner, the last time I had dinner with him, it wasn't over that, but he admitted to me that he bribed doctors when he was a drug rep to give stuff to people, and nobody gave a damn about it. Bribed them to overprescribe stuff. 7 million people in this country are on antidepressants, can you believe it? And it's doubled in 10 years. That's a fucking crisis. That's the biggest story of the week. Nobody's talking about it, of course. I see Sky News and the BBC, they do their newspaper reviews. Nobody said a word about it. That doctor in Los Angeles should be struck off. Gone. How dare he? I'm a bit knackered, yeah. I'm writing a book and me child just won't go to bed, and sure, you know the way it is. Here's a prescription. What? Are you out of your fucking mind? Wow. I tell you, I had no time to get into that yesterday, but I wanted to get into it. And in the same article, she talks about 54% of 3 and 4-year-olds have their own iPad now in the UK. 54 out of every 100 3 or 4-year-olds in England has an iPad. Oh my God. Wow. Well, the antidepressants and the prescribing of them is going to treble and quadruple in the next 20 years because the addiction to the iPads and the smartphones is going to drive children out of their fucking minds, where they're going to need antidepressants. Unbelievable. Let's move on, 13 minutes at the top of the hour. This might be the last story because I want to get this done in an hour today. Oh, did you see this? This is funny. Big kudos to RT for covering this, by the way, RT.com. Officials at a Virginia middle school are under fire after allegedly excluding a transgender girl from participating in an active shooter drill with her classmates. According to Equality Stafford, which is a local LGBTQ plus rights group, the trans student was prevented from entering either the boys' or girls' locker room with her peers during the drill while teachers debated where she should go. There's an active shooter killing people. I'm sorry, Jane, we don't know where to fucking put you. You're on your own, kid. Mental, right? Here's RT with the story. This is some funny stuff.
US school is under fire after it separated a young transgender student from classmates during an emergency lockdown drill for a gun attack. Teachers at the middle school in the state of Virginia couldn't decide whether the pupil should take cover in the boys' or girls' locker room, so was kept away. LGBT rights groups say the staff should be charged with emotional abuse.
All right. Yeah. RT with the story there. Now, what RT did then was it paired the conservative radio host John Gaunt, whom I used to know one time when I was working in Spain, Gaunty, and they paired John with human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell. And it's fascinating stuff. Listen to Peter Tatchell and John Gaunt debate this. I don't need to tell you who's who. I'm sure you'll be able to identify both of them. It's good stuff, this.
Now, if this had not been a drill, if it had been a real live incident of a terrorist attack upon that school, I fear that as the teachers debated with the trans people where to place them, the backwards and forwards of the discussion probably would have ended up that they would have all been exposed and could have all been potentially killed.
Everybody is treading on eggshells around this subject, so you're probably correct that the school was worried they would get accused of transphobia or whatever they want to call it this week.
The main thing is, in this kind of situation, get the kids to a safe place.
You know, this is just the trans people again, trying to dominate social policy, trying to change the world into their way of thinking.
They don't have to be segregated into boys and girls. That's not necessary. Just get the kids, whatever their gender, whatever their sexuality, get them to a safe place. Protect the kids. That comes first.
Yes, you can't argue with Peter there, and I think Gaunty is wrong. We've often blamed the fascist trans lobby, and we will continue to blame them where they deserve some blame. But in this case, Peter Tatchell, my old pal, is right. What the fuck are you arguing for? You know what I mean? There's a guy with a gun. Where should we put Jane? It's insane, isn't it? The madness of the world, right? Get them safe and don't be arguing about where they go. It's mad. If a boy says he is a girl and wants to identify as such, you can debate that all day long, and you can argue all day long about his access to girl-only areas and all of that. Yes, but if there's an active shooter running around the school, get them all into a room and lock the door. But John Gaunt does have a good point too about the trans lobby, and they talk here about the trans lobby.
The most important thing is that we understand and accept the right of trans people to live their lives with dignity, respect, and without living in fear.
The whole idea of equality is that we all have equality. What is happening at the moment with the militant trans around the globe is they're trying to dominate the agenda on every single subject. They're trying to make us all, whether we like it or not, accept trans women as if they're real women. Trans lobby needs to calm it down a bit, the militant ones.
Anger, and perhaps even extremism, is the cry of downtrodden, oppressed, suffering people, that they lash out because they've suffered so much. So I think they need to be given some leeway. But I agree that the debate should be conducted in civil... Let me finish, John. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you. I think the debate should be conducted in civil terms. Gender is about much more than physical bodily appendages. It's about genes, chromosomes, DNA. It's also, according to the new evidence, about brain structures.
But some people, Peter, do not believe that and do not agree with that. And some people say this gender nonsense has to stop.
Why not give the person the dignity they deserve? Treat them with the way that we would want to be respected. You know, we all like the people to respect us.
Population is not.
Let me finish, John. Let me finish, John. You've had a lot. You've said a lot.
I believe that the radical, militant, extremist men in dresses need to be stopped, and they need to calm down.
Good stuff by Ortiz there. Diametrically opposed guys having a civilised debate. Peter Tatchell will always talk to people and doesn't spend his time calling people bigots and calling them hate speechers or any of that. I disagree with Peter about how he views trans women and trans men, but I like him because he always stands up for free speech, and his response to the Supreme Court ruling today was the response that I expected from Peter. I expected him to support the baker's right not to put the slogan on the cake. I've known him for many years, Peter Tatchell, and he's happy to speak to anybody. Good stuff. Right, 6 minutes to the top of the hour. I'm going to leave you with this because we've heard a lot about John Kavanagh, Brett Kavanaugh. What's wrong with me? Brett Kavanaugh, Supreme Court nominee, not anymore. He's on the Supreme Court now. And the allegations by Christine Blasey Ford and all the furore about all of that. Larry King, who works for RT these days, the old dog himself, the experienced old presenter, interviewed the actress Alyssa Milano, who was in many films. She was in Charmed as well, I think, the TV series. And I think she was first in Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the day. One of the best films ever made. Commando. Anyway, Larry King asked her about the concerns, because she's very prominent in the Me Too movement. So Larry asked her about concerns that Me Too is making it easier for women to make false claims against men whom they don't like. And I thought this was an interesting exchange. Larry King, you will hear first, then Alyssa Milano.
Some expressed concern over the possibility of good men. President Trump declared it a scary time for young men. I know how you feel about the Me Too movement, as all of us should. Is there a danger that somebody who doesn't like somebody could just say, he attacked me?
Now, this is good because I don't think she understands the question. I think she's bright, but I don't think she understands the question. He's talking about the future. Because of what's happening now, he's talking about looking into a crystal ball. Are we going to see more of people using this as a weapon to get rid of men they don't like? I don't think she got that. This is her answer.
And get them fired.
I mean, yes, there is always that danger. But when we look at the statistics of how many people come forward and falsely accuse a man of these kinds of sexual misconduct, it's a very, very small, minuscule amount. And that's you get even smaller when you go to the fact that 70 to 80% of women don't even report. So we're looking at a very small amount.
Yeah, a small amount, but she's looking historically. I'm prepared to accept, I'm prepared to stipulate that it wouldn't have been a phenomenon in the past. Yes, I'm sure some women made false allegations against men, and yes, I'm sure some men made false allegations against women, but it wouldn't have been a common thing, I wouldn't imagine anyway. Maybe I'm naive. It's not about the past, it's about the future. And that's what King was trying to get at, right?
Small amount. And I would also add that less than 1% actually are prosecuted. Less than 1% of rapists are prosecuted.
On Meet the Press, you said you believe people are in the process of defining what due process looks like.
Yes.
What do you mean?
Well, due process is obviously in the Constitution, but women are not in the Constitution. We only have the right to vote, right? So that's the 19th Amendment. Lawyers have...
I'm going to leave that there because she missed the point that he was trying to make. She's very prominent in the Me Too movement. And Larry, God love him, probably because he had time constraints, she wasn't the only guest on his show, should have pressed her on that and should have said, look, I'm asking you about what it might lead to in the future. You know, this is becoming weaponized. And it might lead to an increase in men being accused of things they didn't do by vengeful women for any number of reasons. Anyway, Folks, that's it from me today. Back to the full 2-hour show tomorrow with 2 guests. Appreciate your patience with me today. I've worked pretty hard today. I've put a 45-minute stream of consciousness on YouTube about the need for robust debate. I think there are some interesting points in there. I also think I ramble quite a bit, which I tend to do. But in amongst the rambling, there's some interesting things to think about. It's on youtube.com/Richie Allen Show. That is the stream of consciousness today that I did around about the mid-afternoon period or so, or maybe earlier this morning. I can't remember now. It's been a mad day. Hope you've enjoyed that today. Thanks for staying with me. Look after yourselves and one another. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. God, it's warm in the studio now. It's been a warm day here. Going to leave you with some Jaime. She's she was Jewish, wasn't she, Amy Winehouse? I think Amy was Jewish. Amy Winehouse. And a track called Love is a Losing Game. See you tomorrow at 5. Until then, bye for now.